The dust storm that swept Zelda Norton into Angel's Camp, California, that scorching July afternoon in 1878 should have killed her. But instead, it just left her half dead and wholly unwelcome. She collapsed at the edge of town near the livery stable, her dress torn and caked with mud from 3 days of walking through the foothills, her shoes nothing more than strips of leather barely clinging to her bleeding feet. The stagecoach driver who had thrown her off 20 miles back had made it clear that women like her, pregnant and without a husband, were bad luck, and he would not risk the other passengers' safety for someone so clearly cursed by God himself. The first person to find her was Mrs. Adelaide Porter, the banker's wife, who took one look at Zelda's swollen belly and unmarked ring finger and hurried past as though the girl carried cholera. Then came the blacksmith, who started toward her before his apprentice whispered something in his ear. He stopped mid-stride and returned to his forge. A group of women gathered outside the general store, their faces a mixture of curiosity and disgust, but not one moved to help. Zelda managed to pull herself to her knees, then to her feet, swaying dangerously. The world tilted and spun, but she forced herself to walk. The hotel stood at the corner, its painted sign promising beds and meals. She stumbled through the door, nearly falling against the registration desk. The clerk, a thin man with spectacles perched on his narrow nose, looked up from his ledger. His eyes traveled from her face to her belly, and his expression hardened immediately. "We have no rooms," he said flatly. "Please," Zelda whispered, her voice cracking. "I have money, I can pay." "I said we have no rooms, not for your kind, my kind." The words came out sharper than she intended, fueled by 3 days of hunger and fear. "I am a person in need of shelter, that is all. You are an unwed mother, and this is a respectable establishment. Leave before I have the sheriff remove you." Zelda's vision blurred with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough these past months. She turned and walked back into the brutal afternoon sun, her legs trembling with exhaustion. The boarding house was next, run by a widow named Mrs. Callahan. Surely another woman would show compassion. But Mrs. Callahan's compassion extended only to those who fit within her strict moral framework. She opened the door just wide enough to peer out, saw Zelda's condition, and shook her head firmly. "I cannot have you here. What would my other boarders think? What would the church ladies say? I have a reputation to maintain, girl. Move along. Please, I just need a place to rest. One night. I will leave at first light. And have you give birth under my roof? Bring scandal to my door? Absolutely not. There is a mission house in Stockton, 30 miles north. Go there. They take in fallen women." The door slammed shut with such finality that Zelda actually flinched. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the painted wood before turning away. Fallen women. As if she had chosen this path, as if any woman would choose to be cast out and condemned. She tried 3 more establishments. The seamstress who might have employed her took one look and said her customers would not approve. The restaurant owner said he needed no help, though a sign in his window clearly advertised for a waitress. Even the church, that supposed sanctuary for the weary and heavy-laden, offered only judgment delivered by a stern-faced deacon who suggested she pray for forgiveness and move along to a larger city where charitable institutions existed for women in her unfortunate circumstance. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western hills when Zelda found herself at the far end of town, near a small creek that wound through a stand of cottonwood trees. She sank down onto the bank, finally allowing the tears to come. Her feet throbbed with every heartbeat. Her belly, 7 months swollen with child, ached. She had not eaten since the previous morning, and the hunger was making her lightheaded and nauseous. She had been a fool to come west. But what choice had she had? Her father had thrown her out when her condition became obvious, and her mother had been too cowed by his rage to intervene. The man responsible, Thomas Garrett, had been the son of a wealthy Boston merchant, and he had made promises he never intended to keep. When she told him about the baby, he had given her $50 and told her to handle it quietly, then disappeared on a convenient business trip to New York. So she had taken the money and bought a ticket west, where she hoped the vastness of the frontier might offer anonymity and a fresh start. She had been wrong. The frontier might be vast, but small towns were the same everywhere, and a woman alone and with child was marked as surely as if she wore a scarlet letter pinned to her breast. The sound of a horse approaching made her look up, wiping hastily at her tears. A man sat astride a tall sorrel gelding, his hat pulled low against the slanting sunlight. He was lean and weathered, probably in his late 20s, with several days' growth of dark beard and eyes that struck her as sad even from a distance. He wore the typical garb of a working cowboy: dusty denim pants, a faded blue shirt, scuffed boots with spurs that caught the light. A well-worn gun belt hung at his hip. He reined in the horse and sat there for a moment, just looking at her. Zelda braced herself for another judgment, another rejection. But instead his voice when it came was surprisingly gentle. "Are you hurt, miss?" The simple concern in his tone nearly undid her completely. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. He dismounted with the easy grace of someone who spent more time in the saddle than on foot and took a few steps closer, though he maintained a respectful distance. "You are the woman folks have been talking about in town, the one looking for a place to stay. I am Zelda Norton." She lifted her chin, determined to maintain what little dignity she had left. "And yes, I have been looking, though it seems your town has no use for someone like me." "My town?" He almost smiled, a brief quirk of his mouth that did not quite reach his eyes. "Angel's Camp belongs to them, not to me. I am just someone passing through who happens to work nearby. Then you understand what it feels like to be unwanted." This time he did smile, though it was tinged with bitterness. "I reckon I do, Miss Norton. I am Isaac Murphy, and I work at the Davidson Ranch about 5 miles northeast of here. I came into town for supplies." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internal. "I heard what happened, about the hotel and the boarding house and all the rest. It is not right the way they treated you." "Right or wrong does not change my situation," Zelda said tiredly. "I should keep moving, find another town before dark. You will not make it another mile in your condition, begging your pardon for being direct." Isaac glanced back toward town, then at the darkening sky, then at her again. When he spoke, the words came slowly, as if he was surprising himself. "I have a house. It is not much, just a small cabin on the Davidson property, but it has a roof that does not leak and a good stove. You could stay there." Zelda stared at him, waiting for the condition, the price that such an offer always carried. "And what would you want in return?" "Nothing." He held up his hands. "I am not proposing anything improper, Miss Norton. The cabin has 2 rooms. You would have one, I would keep the other. There is a bolt on the bedroom door if that makes you feel safer. I just cannot sit by and watch you sleep rough when I have shelter going to waste." "Why?" The question came out as barely more than a whisper. "Why would you help me when everyone else in this town wants me gone?" Isaac was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "Because I know what it is like to have nowhere to go and no one to turn to. Because my own mother died when I was 10, trying to keep my baby sister alive after my father left us. A woman in Carson City took us in, no questions asked, just pure kindness. She saved our lives. My sister grew up healthy because of her." I figure I owe the world a debt for that kindness, and maybe this is a small way to pay it back." There was truth in his voice, a raw honesty that convinced Zelda more than any elaborate explanation could have. She was also desperately tired, desperately hungry, and desperately out of options. Pride was a luxury she could not afford. "I accept your offer, Mr. Murphy, and I thank you for it." He nodded once, then moved to his horse and began untying a bundle from behind the saddle. "I cannot have you walk 5 miles, not in your state. Can you ride?" "You could take the horse and I will walk alongside." "I can ride well enough, though it has been a while." Isaac helped her mount, his touch careful and respectful, his hand steady as he made sure she was secure in the saddle. Then he took the reins and began leading the horse along a worn trail that branched away from town and into the rolling grassland dotted with oak trees. They walked in silence for the first mile, Zelda swaying slightly with the horse's gait, Isaac's boots scuffing against the hard, packed earth. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermal currents. In the distance, cattle lowed. "You work with cattle?" Zelda asked, needing to break the silence. "Yes, madam. I am a ranch hand. Have been for about 8 years now, ever since I was old enough to be useful. I hire on at various spreads, go where the work is. Been at the Davidson place for 3 years this summer. It is good work, steady pay, and Mr. Davidson is fair, which is more than you can say for most ranch owners." "And you live alone in this cabin?" "I do. Most of the other hands live in the bunkhouse closer to the main ranch buildings, but when I hired on, Mr. Davidson offered me the cabin because I had been with him longer than most. It sits on the edge of the property, near a spring. Quiet. I like the quiet." There was something in his voice that suggested he needed the quiet, that he was running from noise of some kind, though not the physical sort. Zelda understood that feeling. She had been trying to outrun the noise in her own head for months now. "Is it safe out here?" "I have heard stories about bandits and hostile Indians. The Indians in these parts are mostly peaceful now, pushed onto reservations or trying to survive in the mountains. As for bandits, they tend to stick to the main roads and stage routes. A small cabin in the middle of ranch land does not offer much in the way of prizes. Besides, I am armed and know how to use this." He gestured toward the revolver at his hip. "But I have never had to use it for anything more than putting down a sick calf or scaring off a coyote." They walked on as twilight deepened into true dusk. Zelda's body ached from the long day, but the gentle rocking of the horse was almost soothing. She studied Isaac's profile in the fading light, trying to understand this stranger who was offering her salvation without expecting anything in return. He was not handsome in the conventional sense, his features too angular, his jaw too strong, but there was something compelling about him, a quiet strength that made her feel safer than she had in months. "How old is your sister now?" she asked. 19. "She is married to a good man in Sacramento, has a baby boy. I visit when I can, though it has been near a year since I last made the trip. Life gets busy. She is lucky to have a brother who cares. I am lucky to still have her. There were times I was not sure we would both make it." The cabin came into view as they crested a small rise. It was indeed small, but solidly built of timber and stone, with a covered porch and a stone chimney. A small corral stood beside it, currently empty. The spring Isaac had mentioned bubbled up from rocks about 30 yards away, forming a clear pool before trickling away into the grass. Isaac helped Zelda dismount, then led the horse to the corral and removed the saddle and bridle with practiced efficiency. Zelda stood on the porch, suddenly nervous. This was real now, not just an abstract offer made in desperation. She was going to be living with a strange man in an isolated cabin miles from town. As if sensing her thoughts, Isaac said as he approached, "I meant what I said about propriety, Miss Norton. I am offering shelter, nothing more, and I work long hours, so you will have the place mostly to yourself during the day. I believe you, Mr. Murphy, and I am grateful, truly." He opened the door and lit a lamp just inside, flooding the interior with warm yellow light. The cabin was sparse but clean. A table and 2 chairs occupied one corner near the stove. A simple cupboard held dishes and dry goods. A door led to what must be the bedroom, and Zelda could see a neatly made bed through the opening. Another door, currently closed, must lead to the second room Isaac had mentioned. "The bedroom is yours," Isaac said, already moving to gather blankets from a chest. "I will take the back room. It is really more of a storage space, but I can make do. There is a chamber pot under the bed, but there is also an outhouse about 20 paces behind the cabin if you prefer. Mr. Murphy, I cannot take your bed. You can and you will. You need it more than I do." His tone brooked no argument. "Now, you must be starving. Let me see what I can put together for supper." He moved to the stove and began building a fire with quick, competent movements. From the cupboard he produced bacon, beans, a partial loaf of bread that was only a day or 2 old, and coffee. Within minutes, the cabin filled with the smell of cooking food, and Zelda's stomach cramped with hunger. "Sit down before you fall down," Isaac said without looking up from the pan where bacon was beginning to sizzle. Zelda obeyed, sinking into one of the chairs with a sigh of relief. Her feet felt as though they were on fire. Without thinking, she bent to unlace her ruined shoes, wincing as the leather pulled away from raw blisters. Isaac glanced over and his expression tightened. "Those need tending. After you eat, I have some salve that will help, and clean bandages. You do not need to fuss over me." "It is not fussing. It is common sense. Infected feet will do neither of us any good." They ate in silence, Zelda too hungry and tired for conversation, Isaac apparently content with quiet. The food was simple but good, and she ate every bite, then accepted a second helping when he offered. The coffee was strong and hot, and it helped clear some of the fog from her mind. After supper, Isaac heated water and brought it to her along with a basin, soap, clean rags, and a small tin of salve that smelled of herbs. "I will leave you to tend to yourself. I need to see to a few things outside before full dark." He disappeared, giving her privacy. Zelda washed her feet carefully, hissing at the sting, then applied the salve and wrapped them in the clean bandages. By the time Isaac returned, she had also washed her face and hands and attempted to do something with her tangled hair. "The bedroom is ready," he said. "I put fresh water in the pitcher on the dresser. There is a clean nightshirt in the drawer if you want it. It will be big on you, but it is better than sleeping in a dirty dress." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate for what he was doing, but she did not have anything else to offer. "We can talk more in the morning about what comes next. For tonight, just rest. You are safe here, Miss Norton. I give you my word." Zelda believed him. She went into the bedroom and closed the door, then slid the bolt home, not because she truly feared him, but because the small click of metal against metal gave her a measure of control in a situation where she had so little. The room was plain but clean, the bed covered with a quilt that looked handmade. She changed into the nightshirt Isaac had mentioned, and it did indeed swallow her, but it was soft and clean and smelled of soap and sunshine. She lay down on the bed, expecting to fall asleep immediately. But instead she found herself staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Isaac moving around in the other room, the scrape of a chair, the clink of dishes being washed. She heard him go outside again, then return. Eventually, she heard his footsteps move toward the back room and the quiet closing of a door. Only then did she let herself relax, truly relax for the first time in days. She was inside. She was safe. She was not going to spend the night terrified and exposed, wondering if she would survive until morning. A single tear slid down her cheek, but it was not born of despair this time. It was something closer to relief, mixed with wonder that kindness could still exist in such an unforgiving world. She slept deeply and did not dream. When Zelda woke, the sun was already well up, streaming through the small window in golden shafts. For a moment she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was, but then the events of the previous day came flooding back. She sat up slowly, her body stiff and sore but rested in a way it had not been for weeks. The cabin was quiet. She rose and dressed in her own clothes, grimacing at their filthy state, then opened the bedroom door cautiously. The main room was empty, the stove cold, a pot of coffee sitting beside it with a note propped against it. "Miss Norton, I left early for work but will be back this evening. There is bread and preserves for breakfast. Coffee just needs heating. Help yourself to anything you need. There is a creek about a quarter-mile west if you want to wash clothes. Soap is in the cupboard. Be back around supper time. Isaac Murphy." The handwriting was careful and surprisingly neat. Zelda held the note for a moment, reading it twice, then carefully folded it and tucked it into her pocket. She heated the coffee, ate some bread with strawberry preserves, and felt almost human again. The day stretched before her with no demands, no expectations. It felt strange and wonderful. She explored the cabin more thoroughly, finding it tidy and organized in a way that suggested Isaac was accustomed to taking care of himself. In the cupboard she found not just food staples but sewing supplies, candles, matches, a deck of worn playing cards and 2 books, a Bible and a collection of Shakespeare's plays. The latter surprised her until she remembered that cowboys were often more educated than people assumed, men who had come west from all walks of life. She found the soap and gathered her dirty clothes, then made her way to the creek Isaac had mentioned. It was a beautiful spot, shaded by willows and oaks, the water clear and cold. She washed her clothes as best she could, scrubbing them against the rocks, then spread them on bushes to dry in the sun. She even dared to wade into the water fully dressed in the nightshirt, letting the current wash away days of grime and sweat. By the time she returned to the cabin in the early afternoon, her hair clean and braided down her back, wearing the nightshirt since her dress was still damp, she felt like a different person. She had found a broom in the corner and decided to sweep the cabin floor, then scrubbed the table and organized the cupboard, which did not really need organizing but gave her something useful to do. She was peeling potatoes for supper when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Through the window she saw Isaac riding toward the cabin, his hat dark with sweat, dust coating his clothes. He looked bone-tired but straightened when he saw her dress hanging on the porch rail to finish drying. He dismounted and came to the door, pausing before entering. "Miss Norton, you are still here. Did you think I would leave?" "I was not sure. Some folks do not like charity even when they need it." He came inside and removed his hat, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "You did not have to clean. I needed to do something useful. And I am making supper, if that is acceptable. Just potatoes and bacon again, and I found some carrots that needed using. It is more than acceptable." He moved to the bucket of water near the door and washed his hands and face, the grime sloughing away to reveal tanned skin beneath. "Miss Norton, we need to talk about your situation, about what happens next." Zelda set down the knife she had been using and turned to face him. "I know I cannot stay here indefinitely, Mr. Murphy. It is not proper, and it would damage your reputation if anyone found out." "My reputation is the least of my concerns," Isaac said bluntly. "But you are right that people will talk if they discover you are living here, which brings me to something I have been thinking about all day while I was mending fences and moving cattle." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "I have a proposal, a business arrangement, if you will." Zelda's heart sank. Here it was, the condition, the price she had been waiting for, but Isaac's next words were not what she expected. "Marry me." She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon." "Marry me," he repeated, his voice steady but his hands betraying his nerves as he turned his hat around and around. "Not a real marriage, not in the sense of, well, in the intimate sense, but a legal marriage in name only. It would give you respectability. People would accept you as Mrs. Murphy instead of judging you as Miss Norton. Your child would have a name, a father's name, even if I am not the actual father. You would have a home, protection. And I would ask nothing from you except perhaps help with cooking and mending, things I am terrible at anyway." Zelda could not find words. Her mind spun with the implications, the sheer unexpectedness of his offer. Isaac continued, his words coming faster now. "I know it is a strange proposal. I know you do not know me and have no reason to trust me beyond what little I have shown you. But I think it could work. I think it could benefit both of us. You need a husband, even a pretend one. And well, I would not mind the company, truth be told. This cabin gets lonely and I am not getting any younger. I would like to think I could help someone, make a difference for you and your child. What happened to you, being cast out like that, it is not right. Let me make it right in this small way. You would marry a woman carrying another man's child. Take on the responsibility of raising that child as your own. I would, if you are willing." "Why?" the question burst from her. "Why would you do this? You do not know me. I could be a terrible person. I could be dishonest or lazy or cruel. Are you any of those things?" "No, but you do not know that." "I think I do. I see how you look at your belly with love, not shame. I see how you cleaned my cabin even though you owe me nothing. I see the strength it took to keep going yesterday when anyone else would have given up. Those things tell me what kind of person you are." Zelda turned away, overwhelmed. "This is madness. Marriage is not a business arrangement. Sometimes it is. Plenty of marriages are arrangements of convenience or necessity. Why not ours? I am not offering you romance, Miss Norton. I am offering you a solution to an impossible situation. And what do you get from this solution?" He was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, a chance to do something good, a chance not to be alone anymore, a chance to repay the kindness that was shown to me and my sister years ago. Those things are worth a great deal to me." Zelda turned back to face him, studying his face in the lamplight. He met her gaze steadily, no deception in his eyes, just honest sincerity. Part of her wanted to refuse, to cling to her pride, to insist she could manage on her own somehow. But the practical part, the part that had kept her alive these past months, knew this was the best offer she was likely to receive, perhaps the only offer. "If I agree," she said slowly, "I need your word that you will not force your attentions on me. That this arrangement will remain just that, an arrangement. You have my word, Miss Norton. I have never forced myself on a woman, and I never will. Whatever happens between us or does not happen will be your choice always. And the child, you would truly accept him or her as yours. I would raise the child as mine in every way that matters. Love and care and protection, those are what make a father, not blood." Tears prickled at Zelda's eyes. "You are either the kindest man I have ever met or the most foolish." "Perhaps both," Isaac said with a small smile. "So what is your answer?" Zelda took a deep breath. This was madness. This was practical sense. This was terrifying. This was salvation. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Isaac Murphy. The relief that crossed his face was unmistakable. He nodded once firmly. Then we will ride into Angel's Camp tomorrow and find someone to marry us. The circuit judge comes through once a month, and I believe he is due. If not, the justice of the peace can do it. The town will not be happy to see me return, especially on your arm. Let them be unhappy. You will be my wife, and they will have to accept that or answer to me. That night they ate the supper Zelda had prepared, and the conversation was easier than before, as though his proposal and her acceptance had broken down some invisible barrier. He told her more about his work, about the Davidson Ranch and the cattle drives and the harsh beauty of the California grasslands. She told him about her life in Boston, carefully editing out the painful parts, focusing instead on her love of reading and her skill with a needle, how she had worked in a dressmaker's shop before everything fell apart. You could do that here, Isaac suggested. Sewing, I mean. Once people accept you, they might hire you for mending or dressmaking. Angel's Camp is not large, but it is growing. Women always need sewing done. Perhaps, Zelda said, though she doubted the women of Angel's Camp would ever truly accept her, married or not. They would remember how she had arrived. That night, lying in the bed that was now hers, Zelda stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine what her life would be like as Mrs. Isaac Murphy. It would not be a real marriage, he had made that clear, but it would be something. Security, stability, a name for her child. Those were gifts beyond price. And Isaac, despite being a virtual stranger, seemed like a decent man. She could do far worse. Still, as she drifted towards sleep, she felt a pang of something that might have been grief for the life she had once imagined, the romantic love story that would never be hers now. This marriage would be practical, nothing more. She needed to accept that and be grateful for what it offered. The morning dawned clear and hot. Isaac had already been up for an hour, tending to the horse and preparing for the trip to town. He had laid out his cleanest shirt and had shaved, transforming himself from a rough cowboy into someone almost respectable. Zelda wore her one dress, now clean and mended as best she could manage. It was plain brown calico, let out at the seams to accommodate her pregnancy, and it would never be fashionable, but it was decent. She had braided her dark blonde hair and pinned it up in a simple style. They rode together on Isaac's horse, Zelda seated in front of him, his arms on either side of her holding the reins. It was the closest they had been to each other, and she was intensely aware of his presence, the warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. He smelled of soap and leather and something else, something clean and masculine that was not unpleasant. The ride to Angel's Camp took just over an hour. As they entered the town, Zelda felt eyes on them immediately. People stopped what they were doing to stare. She heard murmurs, saw fingers pointing. Mrs. Porter, the banker's wife, actually gasped and clutched her companion's arm. Isaac ignored them all, riding straight to the courthouse, a modest two-story building near the center of town. He dismounted and helped Zelda down, then tied the horse to the hitching post. "Stay close to me," he said quietly. "Do not let them intimidate you." Inside, they found the clerk of the court, a middle-aged man named Henderson who looked up from his paperwork with obvious curiosity. "We need to be married," Isaac said without preamble. "Is Judge Carson in town?" Henderson's eyes flicked to Zelda, to her belly, then back to Isaac. "He is, as it happens. Arrived yesterday, but Mr. Murphy, are you certain about this?" "I am certain. Can you arrange it?" "I can, but there is a waiting period of 3 days." "We do not have 3 days. The baby could come any time. I want my wife to have my name before that happens." The possessive way he said "my wife" sent an unexpected warmth through Zelda. Henderson sighed. The judge might waive the waiting period in special circumstances. Wait here. I will inquire. He disappeared into the back rooms, and they were left standing in the corridor. Zelda could hear voices through the open front door, more people gathering outside, news of their presence spreading through town like wildfire. "They are all talking about us," she whispered. "Let them talk. It does not matter." But it did matter, at least to Zelda. She hated being the object of gossip and scorn, hated knowing that her story was being twisted and exaggerated with each retelling. Henderson returned with a stern-looking man in his 50s, dressed in a black suit with a gold watch chain across his vest. Judge Carson regarded them both with sharp, assessing eyes. "Mr. Murphy, Miss Norton, I understand you wish to be married today." "We do, Your Honor," Isaac said. "And you understand, Miss Norton, that marriage is a sacred bond, not to be entered into lightly." "I do, Your Honor." "The child you carry is not Mr. Murphy's." Zelda flushed but held her head high. "No, Your Honor, but he has agreed to accept the child as his own." The judge turned to Isaac. "This is a large responsibility you are taking on, young man. Are you prepared for it?" "I am, Your Honor." "I would not be here otherwise." Judge Carson was silent for a long moment, studying them both. Then he nodded. "Very well. I will waive the waiting period. Henderson, prepare the license. We will conduct the ceremony in my chambers." Relief flooded through Zelda so powerfully she swayed. Isaac's hand immediately went to her elbow, steadying her. Within the hour, they stood before the judge in his book-lined chamber, Henderson and his wife serving as witnesses. The ceremony was brief and businesslike. But when Isaac slipped a plain gold band onto Zelda's finger, a band that he later admitted had been his mother's and the only thing of value he owned, tears slid down her cheeks, despite her best efforts to contain them. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Carson said. "Mr. Murphy, you may kiss your bride." It had not occurred to Zelda that this moment would come. She looked up at Isaac, panicked, but he merely leaned forward and pressed the lightest of kisses to her forehead, so chaste and gentle that it could not offend even the strictest sensibilities. "Mrs. Murphy," he said softly, and the name sounded strange and wonderful on his lips. They signed the certificate, paid the fee, and walked out of the courthouse as husband and wife. The crowd outside had grown larger, and the murmurs increased as they appeared. Zelda saw Mrs. Callahan from the boarding house, her face pinched with disapproval. She saw the hotel clerk who had turned her away. She saw dozens of curious, judgmental faces. Isaac helped her onto the horse, then swung up behind her. Before he could turn the animal, Mrs. Porter stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly. "How noble of you, Mr. Murphy, to marry such a woman. Though I wonder if you know what you have gotten yourself into, taking on damaged goods." Isaac's entire body went rigid. Zelda felt it, the sudden tension in his muscles, the spike of anger. He twisted in the saddle to face Mrs. Porter directly. "That is my wife you are speaking of, madam. I would thank you to show her the respect that title deserves. And if you cannot manage basic human decency, then I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself before you say something you will regret." The steel in his voice left no room for argument. "Mrs. Porter actually took a step back, her face going red. Several people in the crowd looked ashamed. Others still glared with stubborn self-righteousness. Isaac turned the horse and they rode out of town at a steady pace, neither hurrying nor dawdling, his posture radiating defiance. Zelda sat in front of him, her throat tight with emotion, the gold band on her finger feeling both foreign and right. They were halfway back to the cabin before either of them spoke. "Thank you," Zelda said quietly, "for defending me. You are my wife now. Defending you is part of the bargain." He paused. "I am sorry you had to endure their judgment again. It is nothing I have not heard before in one form or another, but it felt different this time, having someone stand beside me. You will always have that now. Whatever our arrangement, we are married in the eyes of the law and God, and I take that seriously." Zelda believed him. This man, this virtual stranger, had just bound his life to hers with full knowledge of what he was taking on, asking nothing in return but simple companionship. It humbled her and frightened her in equal measure. Back at the cabin, they fell into a strange new rhythm. Isaac went to work each day as usual, rising before dawn and returning at dusk. Zelda kept the cabin clean, prepared meals, mended his clothes, and tried to make herself useful. They were polite to each other, careful, both aware of the oddness of their situation. But slowly, over days and then weeks, something shifted. Conversations during supper grew longer, more personal. Isaac told her about his childhood, about his father's abandonment and his mother's slow decline into illness and despair. Zelda shared more about her own past, about the shame her father had heaped on her, and the betrayal of a man she had trusted. "Thomas Garrett," Isaac repeated when she told him the name. "If I ever meet him, it will not go well for him. He is in Boston, safely distant, and I do not want revenge, Isaac. I just want to move forward. You are a better person than I am. I think I would want revenge." One evening in late August, Isaac came home with a package wrapped in brown paper. "I picked this up in town. For you." Zelda unwrapped it to find fabric, good quality calico in a soft blue color, along with thread and new needles. "Isaac, this is too much. You need a new dress. That one is worn through, and you will need something after the baby comes. I thought you could make it yourself, since you have the skill. There is enough there for a dress for you and gowns for the baby." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought tears to her eyes, as so many things did lately. The baby pressed on her emotions as much as her bladder. "Thank you. This is very kind. You are my wife, Zelda. Providing for you is not kindness, it is responsibility." But it felt like kindness. It felt like care. And as she sat by lamplight that evening, beginning to cut the fabric into pattern pieces, she found herself watching Isaac as he sat across from her, mending a bridle, and wondering what it would be like if this marriage were real in every sense. The thought startled her. She had not expected to feel anything for Isaac beyond gratitude, but she was beginning to realize he was more than just her benefactor. He was patient and hardworking. He had a quiet sense of humor that emerged in unexpected moments. He was unfailingly gentle with her, careful never to crowd her or make her uncomfortable. And he was handsome in his way, particularly when he smiled, which he did more often now than when they had first met. She pushed the thought aside. Their arrangement was clear. She could not complicate it with romantic notions that he did not share, but the feelings, once acknowledged, did not disappear. They grew, quietly but persistently, like seedlings pushing toward sunlight. In early September, Isaac brought home a wooden cradle he had made in his spare hours at the ranch workshop. It was simple but beautifully crafted, sanded smooth and sturdy. "I thought the baby would need somewhere to sleep," he said, almost shyly. Zelda ran her hand over the wood, imagining her child sleeping there, safe and warm. "It is perfect. You made this. Mr. Davidson let me use his tools and wood. I worked on it during lunch breaks mostly." She looked up at him, this man who had married her out of pure goodness, who asked nothing and gave everything. "You are going to be a wonderful father." Something flickered in his eyes, too quick for her to identify. "I will try to be." That night, lying in bed, Zelda felt the baby move, a strong kick against her ribs. She pressed her hand to the spot, marveling at the life inside her. Soon this child would be born, and Isaac would be there, committed to raising a child not his own. The magnitude of his sacrifice struck her anew. She heard movement from the back room, heard Isaac stirring restlessly. Did he sleep poorly? She had never thought to ask. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would ask him things that mattered, learn more about this man who was her husband in name and law if not yet in heart, though her heart was beginning to have ideas of its own. The next morning at breakfast she said, "You sleep well in that back room. It cannot be very comfortable." Isaac looked up from his coffee, surprised by the question. "It is fine. Why do you ask?" "Because you seem tired, and I know the room is small and has no proper bed. I have slept in worse places. Truly, Zelda, it is fine." But she noticed he did not answer the question about sleeping well. As September progressed, Zelda's pregnancy advanced toward its final stages. She grew more uncomfortable, her back aching constantly, her sleep fitful. Isaac noticed, of course, and began insisting she rest more, taking on tasks she normally handled. "You should not be hauling water in your condition," he said one evening, finding her struggling with a heavy bucket. "I need to do something, Isaac. I cannot just sit idle all day. You are growing a human being. That is hardly idle." He took the bucket from her. "Please, Zelda. Let me help more. It will not offend me." She relented, realizing he was right. The baby sat heavy and low, and walking had become difficult. She spent more time sitting, sewing baby gowns and tiny blankets, preparing what she would need. One afternoon in late September, Isaac came home in the middle of the day, startling her. "I told Mr. Davidson your time is close. He gave me leave to stay near the cabin for the next week or so, just in case. I can work on mending tack and equipment here. You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did. I will not have you going into labor alone with no one to help. I am not a midwife, but I have delivered enough calves to have some idea what to do. And I can ride for the doctor in town if needed, though I would prefer to avoid that given how they treat you there. There is a Mexican woman, Mrs. Rivera, who lives a few miles south of town. She is a partera, a midwife. Some of the ranch wives have mentioned her. She might be willing to come. I will find her tomorrow and make arrangements. Whatever you need, Zelda. Whatever makes you feel safe." That night the first pains began. They were mild at first, just a tightening across her belly that came and went. Zelda said nothing, not wanting to alarm Isaac unnecessarily. But by morning, the pains were stronger and more regular, and she could not hide them. Isaac took one look at her face and moved into action. "I am going for the midwife. Do not have this baby until I get back." She would have laughed if another contraction had not seized her at that moment. "I will do my best." He was gone in minutes, riding hard. Zelda paced the cabin, breathing through the pains, trying to remember everything her mother had told her about childbirth before she had been cast out. The memories were fragmented, tainted by her father's rage, but she clung to them. Isaac returned within 2 hours with a sturdy older woman riding behind him on the horse. Mrs. Rivera climbed down with surprising agility and came straight to Zelda, her dark eyes kind and assessing. "So, you are the one who married the cowboy." "He rode up to my door like the devil was chasing him, demanding I come help. I like a man who cares for his wife." She turned to Isaac. "You, husband, go make yourself useful elsewhere. This is women's work. I am not leaving her alone. She will not be alone. She will have me." "But you cannot be in the room for the birth. It is not proper." "I do not care about proper. I am staying within shouting distance." Mrs. Rivera studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. You wait outside the door. If we need you, we will call." The labor lasted through the afternoon and into the evening. Mrs. Rivera was competent and calm, guiding Zelda through each contraction, offering water and encouragement. And true to his word, Isaac stayed just outside the bedroom door the entire time, occasionally calling through to ask if all was well. As the sun set and the final stage of labor began, Zelda heard Isaac pacing, heard the worry in his voice when he asked, "Is she all right? Please tell me she is all right." "She is strong," Mrs. Rivera called back. "The baby will come soon. Have patience." And then, as full dark fell with one final exhausting push, Zelda's baby entered the world with a furious wail of protest at the cold air and bright light. "A boy, Mrs. Rivera announced, quickly clearing the infant's mouth and nose, wrapping him in a clean blanket. "You have a son, Mrs. Murphy. A healthy, strong son." She placed the baby in Zelda's arms, and the world narrowed to the tiny, red, wrinkled face, the shock of dark hair, the little fists waving in indignation. Love, instant and overwhelming, flooded through her. This was her son, her child, and he was perfect. "Zelda." Isaac's voice came through the door, tight with anxiety. "Are you all right? Is the baby all right? Come in," Mrs. Rivera said. "Come meet your son." The door opened slowly and Isaac stepped in, his face pale with worry. His eyes went first to Zelda, checking that she was alive and well, and the relief when he saw her was naked on his face. Then he looked at the bundle in her arms, and his expression softened into something Zelda had never seen before, something tender and awed. He crossed to the bed and knelt beside it, looking at the baby with wonder. "He is so small. He is perfect," Zelda whispered. "Would you like to hold him? I do not know how. I will show you." With Mrs. Rivera's help, they transferred the baby into Isaac's arms. He held the infant with exaggerated care, as though the boy were made of glass, and Zelda saw his hands tremble slightly. The baby opened his eyes, unfocused and dark, and seemed to look directly at Isaac. "Hello, little one," Isaac said softly. "Welcome to the world." "I am. Well, I suppose I am your papa now. I will try to do right by you, I promise." Tears stung Zelda's eyes at the tenderness in his voice, at the sight of this strong cowboy holding her tiny son with such gentleness and care. Mrs. Rivera cleared her throat. "He needs a name, this boy." Zelda and Isaac looked at each other. They had not discussed names, had not talked about this moment at all. Zelda had assumed she would name the child herself, but now she realized she wanted Isaac's input. He was going to be the boy's father in every way that mattered. "What do you think?" she asked him. "What should we call him?" "It is your choice, Zelda. He is your son." "He is our son," she corrected gently. "You have claimed him as yours. Help me name him." Isaac looked down at the baby, considering. "My father's name was James, but I would not use that. He does not deserve the honor. But my mother, she was named Constance, and her father was Samuel. I always liked that name. Samuel." "Samuel," Zelda repeated, testing it. "Samuel Murphy, it suits him, I think. Samuel it is." Mrs. Rivera stayed through the night, making sure both mother and baby were stable, teaching Zelda how to nurse and care for the infant. In the morning, she prepared to leave, accepting the payment Isaac offered with grace. "You have a good man here," she said to Zelda quietly. "Not many would do what he has done for you. Honor that gift." "I will," Zelda promised. After Mrs. Rivera left, Isaac hovered uncertainly. "I should let you rest. You have been through an ordeal." "Stay," Zelda said. "Please, I want you here." He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, watching as she nursed the baby, his expression a mixture of fascination and something deeper, something that looked almost like longing. "You are thinking something," Zelda said. "What is it?" "I was thinking that I never imagined this. A family. I assumed I would live and die alone, and I had made my peace with that. But now there is you and Samuel, and I am part of something. It is strange. Good, but strange. You could have this for real, you know. You could find a woman who loves you, marry for the right reasons, have children of your own blood. Maybe, but I have this now, and it feels real enough to me." He reached out and let Samuel's tiny hand wrap around his finger. "He is real. You are real. That is all I need." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Zelda wanted to say something, to express what she was feeling, but exhaustion was pulling at her, and Samuel was falling asleep at her breast. "Rest now," Isaac said, gently extracting his finger from the baby's grip. "I will be right here if you need anything." Zelda drifted into sleep, feeling safer and more content than she had in over a year. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and the overwhelming demands of a newborn. Samuel was a good baby, healthy and growing, but he needed constant care. Isaac stepped into his role as father with determination, learning to change diapers and calm the fussy infant, waking in the night when Samuel cried to bring him to Zelda for nursing. "You do not have to do all this," Zelda said one night as Isaac walked the floor with a crying Samuel singing a soft, off-key lullaby. "He is not your responsibility." "Yes, he is," Isaac said firmly. "I chose this, Zelda. I chose both of you. Let me be a father to him." And he was. As Samuel grew from a newborn to an infant, Isaac was there for every milestone. He carved small toys for the boy to hold. He read to him from the Shakespeare collection, and the sound of Isaac's voice seemed to calm Samuel when nothing else would. He took to parenthood as naturally as if he had been born to it. Watching him with their son, Zelda felt her heart softening, opening in ways she had not expected. This was supposed to be a marriage of convenience, but it was becoming something more, at least on her side. She found herself noticing little things. The way Isaac's face lit up when he came home and saw Samuel, the careful way he hung his hat each evening, the quiet strength in everything he did, the kindness that ran through him like a vein of gold through rock. She was falling in love with her husband, and she had no idea how he felt about her. Winter came to the California foothills, not the bitter cold of Boston, but a gentler season of rain and cool temperatures. The cabin stayed warm thanks to the good stove and Isaac's diligence in keeping wood stocked. Samuel thrived, growing rounder and more alert, beginning to smile and coo in response to their voices. One evening in December, as they sat by the stove after Samuel had been put to bed, Isaac said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Zelda looked up from the sewing in her lap, her heart suddenly racing. His tone was serious, almost somber. "I have been thinking about our arrangement," he continued. "About how we agreed this would be a marriage in name only." Here it was, Zelda thought with sinking dread. He was going to tell her it was too difficult, that he wanted to end the marriage or renegotiate their terms. She braced herself for rejection. "I want to know," Isaac said, looking directly at her with those steady eyes, "if you might consider making this marriage real, in every sense." Zelda's breath caught. "Real? I have feelings for you, Zelda. Strong feelings that go beyond friendship or compassion. I love how you care for Samuel, how you have made this cabin into a home. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the sound of your voice and the way you hum while you sew. I love you, and I want you to be my wife in truth if you are willing. But if you are not, if you cannot see me that way, I will understand. Our arrangement can continue as it has been. I just needed you to know how I feel." Zelda set down her sewing with trembling hands. "You love me." "I do. I have for a while now, but I did not want to pressure you or make you uncomfortable. You have been through so much, and I know you did not marry me for love. But my feelings are real, and they are not going away." Joy and relief flooded through her in equal measure. "Isaac, I have been falling in love with you too. I was afraid to say anything because I thought you wanted to keep things as they were. I thought you would see romantic feelings as a complication." His face transformed with hope. "You love me." "I do. You are the best man I have ever known. You took us in when no one else would. You have been a true father to Samuel. You have been kind and patient and good. How could I not love you?" Isaac moved from his chair and knelt beside hers, taking her hands in his. Then may I court you properly. May I try to win your heart as I should have from the beginning. You already have my heart, Zelda said, tears sliding down her cheeks. But yes, court me. Let us fall in love the way couples are supposed to, even if we are doing it backwards. He smiled, that rare, full smile that changed his entire face, and lifted her hand to kiss her knuckles. I will court you so thoroughly that you will never doubt how I feel about you, Mrs. Murphy. And he did. Over the weeks that followed, Isaac courted his wife with a determination that was both endearing and effective. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers when he found them blooming improbably in winter, a ribbon from town for her hair, a book of poetry he saw in the general store and thought she would like. He began holding her hand when they sat together in the evenings. He complimented her cooking and her appearance. He told her stories about his day and asked about hers with genuine interest. On Christmas Eve, after they had put Samuel to bed, Isaac presented her with a package wrapped in cloth. I made this for you, he said, suddenly shy. It is not much, but I wanted you to have something special. Inside was a wooden box, small and beautifully crafted with her initials carved into the lid. For keeping things that matter to you, he explained. Letters or trinkets or whatever you want. It is beautiful, Zelda whispered, running her fingers over the smooth wood. Thank you, Isaac. There is something inside, he said. She opened the box to find a folded piece of paper. When she unfolded it, she saw it was a drawing, done in careful pencil strokes. It depicted her holding Samuel, rocking him by the window, sunlight streaming in. The detail was remarkable, capturing a quiet moment she had not even known Isaac had observed. You drew this. I am not very skilled, but I wanted to capture how you looked in that moment. You were so beautiful, so peaceful. I wanted to remember it. Zelda looked up at him through tears. This is the most wonderful gift anyone has ever given me. You deserve wonderful gifts, Zelda. You deserve so much more than I can give you. You have given me everything that matters. A home, a name, protection, love. What more could I possibly need? Isaac reached out and cupped her face gently. May I kiss you? Really kiss you, not just on the forehead. Yes, she breathed. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, and when his lips finally met hers, it was soft and sweet and full of promise. Zelda's heart soared. This was what a first kiss should be, tender and respectful and brimming with genuine affection. When they parted, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Zelda Murphy. I love you too, Isaac Murphy. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. They began sleeping in the same room, the same bed, Isaac moving his few possessions from the back room into the bedroom they would now share. Their physical relationship progressed slowly, carefully, with Isaac always attentive to Zelda's comfort and boundaries. He was patient and gentle, erasing the bad memories she carried from her experience with Thomas Garrett, replacing them with new memories of love and respect and mutual pleasure. By spring, their marriage had transformed from an arrangement of convenience into a true partnership built on love and trust. They worked together to plant a small garden near the cabin. They took Samuel on walks along the creek, the baby giggling with delight at the sunshine and birdsong. They talked about the future, about dreams and possibilities. In May, Isaac approached Mr. Davidson about purchasing a small parcel of land adjacent to the ranch. The rancher, who had watched Isaac's dedication over the years and approved of his marriage, agreed to sell at a fair price, with terms Isaac could manage. The land came with grazing rights and water access, enough for Isaac to start building his own small herd of cattle. We are going to have our own place, Isaac told Zelda excitedly, the contract signed and witnessed. Not much at first, just a few acres and whatever cattle I can afford to buy. But it is ours, Zelda. Land that belongs to us that we can pass on to Samuel and any other children we might have." Other children. Zelda's heart leaped at the implication. "If you want them, if you want more children with me." "I do want that," she said honestly. "I want to have your children, Isaac. I want to build a family with you." His kiss that evening was fierce and joyful, and 9 months later, in February of 1880, Zelda gave birth to their second son, whom they named Daniel. The birth was easier than Samuel's had been, perhaps because Zelda was older and more experienced, or perhaps because she was surrounded by love and security rather than fear and desperation. Isaac was present for the entire labor, ignoring propriety and Mrs. Rivera's protests, holding Zelda's hand and wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. When Daniel emerged into the world, Isaac cut the cord himself, tears streaming down his face as he held his biological son for the first time. "He looks like you," Zelda said, exhausted but happy, watching Isaac cradle the newborn with infinite care. "He is perfect," Isaac breathed. "They are both perfect." Samuel, now a toddler of 16 months, was fascinated by his baby brother, wanting to touch and hold him constantly. Isaac and Zelda supervised carefully, teaching him to be gentle, watching the bond between brothers begin to form. The years that followed were marked by hard work and steady growth. Isaac's small herd grew through careful management and shrewd purchasing. He hired on a young ranch hand to help with the work, a quiet boy named Peter who lived in the old back room of the cabin. Zelda took in sewing and mending from some of the ranch families, building a reputation for fine work and fair prices. The women of Angel's Camp still whispered about her past, but time had softened the judgment, and several of the younger wives had begun hiring her services, valuing skill over scandal. In 1882, their first daughter was born, a tiny girl with Zelda's blonde hair and Isaac's steady gaze. They named her Constance, after Isaac's mother, and she was the absolute delight of the family. Samuel and Daniel treated her like a precious doll, bringing her flowers and singing to her. The cabin grew crowded with 3 children, so Isaac spent that summer building an addition, expanding the original structure into a proper house with 3 bedrooms and a larger main room. Neighbors came to help with the roof raising, and the house-warming party they threw afterwards was attended by over 30 people, including some from Angel's Camp who had once turned Zelda away but now treated her with respect, if not quite warmth. Mrs. Rivera, attending the party with her extended family, pulled Zelda aside at one point. "You see, I told you that you had a good man. Look at what you have built together." "I know how fortunate I am," Zelda said, watching Isaac across the room, holding Constance while explaining something to Samuel, Daniel clinging to his leg. "Every day I thank God for bringing me to Angel's Camp, even though it seemed like the worst thing at the time." "The worst things sometimes lead to the best things," Mrs. Rivera said wisely. "It is the way of the world." In 1884, twin boys were born, Thomas and Matthew, and the house erupted into joyful chaos. Isaac hired more help for the ranch work, and Zelda reluctantly gave up most of her sewing to focus on managing the household and the ever-growing brood of children. The twins were wild and adventurous, constantly getting into trouble, requiring constant supervision. Through it all, Isaac and Zelda's love continued to deepen. They had their challenges, of course. Money was tight some years. The cattle market fluctuated. Droughts tested their resilience. The children got sick, suffered injuries, had tantrums and difficult phases. But they faced everything together, a unified team, supporting each other through every trial. On their 7th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Zelda on a rare trip away from the children, leaving them in the care of Mrs. Rivera and Peter's wife, a sweet girl named Mary whom he had married the previous year. They rode to a hotel in Stockton, a real hotel with soft beds and hot baths and restaurant meals, luxuries they rarely experienced. That night, lying in the unfamiliar hotel bed, Zelda said, "Do you ever regret it? Taking me in that day, marrying me, taking on the responsibility of Samuel and all the rest." Isaac propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. "Not for a single moment. That day I found you by the creek was the best day of my life. You and the children are the best things that ever happened to me, Zelda. I was half alive before you, just going through the motions. You made me whole. You saved my life," Zelda said, touching his face. "You and Samuel would have died if not for you, and you gave me more than life. You gave me love and family and purpose. You gave me everything." "We saved each other," Isaac corrected gently. "I needed you just as much as you needed me, maybe more." They made love that night with the tenderness and passion of a couple deeply in love, secure in their commitment to each other, grateful for the life they had built together from the ruins of Zelda's desperation and Isaac's loneliness. More years passed, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and family. Samuel grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and learning, surprising everyone when he announced at 13 that he wanted to be a doctor. Isaac and Zelda scrimped and saved, determined to send him to medical school when the time came, proud that their son had such ambitions. Daniel became his father's shadow, learning ranch work with enthusiasm, clearly destined to take over the family cattle operation someday. Constance was sweet and gentle, with a talent for drawing that reminded Zelda of the picture Isaac had drawn for her years ago. The twins were still wild, but had channeled their energy into riding and roping, competing at local rodeos with increasing success. In 1890, at age 33, Zelda gave birth to their last child, another daughter they named Rose. The pregnancy had been unexpected and the birth difficult, but both mother and daughter survived. Isaac declared that 6 children were plenty and made arrangements to ensure there would be no more pregnancies, not willing to risk Zelda's health further. Rose proved to be the most spirited of all their children, a tiny terror who feared nothing and charmed everyone. She had Isaac's dark hair and Zelda's green eyes, and she wrapped her father around her little finger from the moment she could smile. As the century drew to a close, Isaac and Zelda found themselves middle-aged, surrounded by a large, boisterous family and a successful ranch that now encompassed several hundred acres and a substantial herd. Samuel had left for medical school in San Francisco, writing home regularly. Daniel was effectively running the day-to-day ranch operations. Constance was engaged to a nice young man from Stockton. The twins were 18 and showing signs of finally settling down. Rose was 10 and still causing delightful havoc. On a warm evening in June of 1899, Isaac and Zelda sat on the porch of their expanded house, watching the sunset paint the hills gold and orange. The sounds of their children's laughter drifted from inside, where Daniel was playing a card game with the twins while Rose pestered them all with questions. 21 years, Zelda said softly. Can you believe it has been 21 years since that day? I remember it like yesterday, Isaac said, taking her hand. I remember how you looked sitting by that creek, so lost and alone. I remember thinking I should just ride past, that it was not my business. And then I remembered my mother and my sister and that woman who helped us, and I could not leave you there. I am so grateful you did not, Zelda said. This life we have, these children, this love, it all started because you were kind when you did not have to be. Because you saw me as a person worth helping when everyone else saw me as a problem to be avoided. You were always worth helping, Isaac said firmly. They were fools, all of them. Their loss was my gain. Zelda leaned her head against his shoulder, comfortable and content. Do you remember our wedding day? How terrified I was. How strange it felt to marry a man I barely knew, I remember. I also remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, agreeing to marry a stranger to protect your child. And now here we are, old married folks with a house full of children and a lifetime of memories. Old, Isaac laughed. You are barely 40, Zelda Murphy. We have decades left, God willing. Then we had better fill those decades with more adventures, Zelda said. Samuel's graduation from medical school. Constance's wedding. The twins will probably get themselves into some kind of exciting trouble. Daniel will marry someday and give us grandchildren. Rose will certainly keep us young with her antics. And through it all, we will have each other, Isaac said, lifting her hand to kiss it, a gesture that had become habit over their years together. That is all I need, Zelda, all I have ever needed. You and me together facing whatever comes. Together, Zelda agreed. Always together. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars began to appear, the sounds of their family a comforting backdrop. This life was nothing like what Zelda had imagined as a frightened, pregnant girl being driven away from Boston. It was nothing like the desperate hopes she had harbored when she stumbled into Angel's camp more dead than alive. It was so much better. She had found love in the last place she expected it, with a lonely cowboy who had offered his home and his name and, eventually, his heart. They had built something beautiful together, something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. The town that had refused her shelter had become her home. The man who had taken her in had become her everything. The child she had carried in shame had grown into a fine young man with a bright future. And together, she and Isaac had created a family, a legacy, a love story that would be told around their table for generations to come. As if reading her thoughts, Isaac said quietly, I love you, Zelda Murphy. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Isaac Murphy. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me. They sat together under the stars, hand in hand, hearts intertwined, their love story complete, and yet still being written with every passing day. From desperate beginning to joyful middle to this peaceful evening, their journey had been marked by challenges overcome, love deepened, and a family built on the foundation of one man's kindness and one woman's courage. The town had refused her shelter, but a lonely cowboy had offered his home and his name, and in doing so had found his own salvation. They had saved each other, and in saving each other, had created something beautiful and enduring, a love worth celebrating, a family worth cherishing, and a life worth living. And as the last light faded from the California sky and the first stars blazed into brilliance, Isaac and Zelda Murphy sat together in the home they had built, surrounded by the family they had created, secure in the knowledge that whatever the future held, they would face it together, united by a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger, purer, and more precious than gold. Their story, which had begun with rejection and desperation, had become a testament to the transforming power of compassion, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring truth that love, when given freely and nurtured faithfully, can overcome any obstacle and create miracles from the most unlikely circumstances. Together, they had proven that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with passion but with kindness, not with romance but with respect, and not with promises but with simple human decency. And those love stories, the ones built slowly and carefully on a foundation of friendship and trust, are often the ones that last forever. As darkness enveloped the California foothills and the Murphy family settled in for the night, Isaac and Zelda remained on the porch a while longer, reluctant to end this perfect evening, content simply to be together as they had been for 21 years and would be, God willing, for decades more to come. Their love story was complete, not because it had ended, but because it had found its rhythm, its purpose, its forever. And that, they both knew, was the happiest ending of all.